Bring in our panel of political strategists. Joining us as they do each Monday, Grahame Morris from Barton Deakin, here with me in the Canberra studio, and Bruce Hawker, former Federal Labor strategist, joining us from the Sky News Centre. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Now, let's start on WA. Grahame Morris, you heard Gary Gray saying just before the break that there were clearly some level of influence from federal government's unpopularity, but he's saying we shouldn't overstate that and we should stick with Julia Gillard, despite what some of the polls are showing and some of his colleagues are saying. What do you make of it?
Well, West Australia first. Look, it's a fantastic result for Colin Barnett, no doubt about that. And there's a new breed of young Liberal Party campaign directors, and there's a fellow in the West named Ben Morton, who obviously again did a fantastic job. But look, Labor's primary vote, again in Western Australia, was 33%. You know, it's 33 everywhere, and they're getting a hiding everywhere. And Gary Gray himself, I thought he batted manfully, but his seat would go in Western Australia, and Stephen Smith would be in awful trouble. Any result that's even half that, they would be in trouble. Look, when we get to the leadership, there is no doubt that, look, everyone can tell the difference between state and federal issues and state and federal elections, but if ever there were any issues like the carbon tax and the mining tax which were targeted at a state, it was Western Australia. Well, and it's been, and the West Australian Labor Party know it, it's been 119 days since the Labor Party could find a reason to get Julia Gillard into Western Australia. 119 days. They don't want her there.
Bruce, looking at the big picture point here that Graham's making about these issues of the carbon tax and mining tax, it's hard for Western Australia not to be seen to be the target of these things. They are the big mining boom state. That the mining tax and carbon tax do arguably hit them more than other states. And look, these do in many ways predate Julia Gillard. They did originate in some form or other under Kevin Rudd. This is a problem for Labor, isn't it?
Look, I think in Western Australia the mining tax has gone down pretty badly, and the reason I think is, as you indicated, Western Australia is a mining state. It's very hard to find anybody there who hasn't got some connection to the mining industry, and they've bought a line from the opposition that says that this is going to damage jobs in the West. Now, contrast that with the fact that there's been a significant growth in mining in the West, in investment in mining in the West. Nevertheless, there is that anxiety in the electorate. So I think you've got to accept that mining tax was always going to be a significant issue in the West, much more, say, than in New South Wales or Victoria or some other states. However, I think there were state issues at play here. Colin Barnett, frankly, has been something of a middle-of-the-road sort of a premier. He hasn't been somebody who's really gone out on a limb to sack public sector employees like, say, Campbell Newman has. And if you look at the way Labor performed in its first terms around the country in 95 through to 2002, they tended to win by about one seat, as Barnett did in 2008, and then they got the big swings to them in the second term when they didn't do anything particularly controversial. That was people like Rand, Gallup, Carr, Beattie particularly. I think he got something like a 9% swing to him in his second election. So you've got to be careful about just saying it's all federal factors. I think it's much more complicated than that.
Well, I want to tease that out a little further. We're going to have to get a quick break in and come back to this discussion. Stay with us. To our discussion on This Week in Politics with Grahame Morris and Bruce Hawker. Now, the question that Gary Gray, as you say, Grahame, was playing a bit of a dead bat to earlier with us was over the future of Julia Gillard's leadership. But there are others within the Labor Party privately today wondering whether she will last the next sitting fortnight. Before we get Bruce Hawker's view on this, Grahame, as a political observer, do you think she will? I'm putting aside whether she should or not, because I know you've got views on this, but how do you see things?
Look, Peter Lewis's poll was interesting, and it shows you the power of prayer, in that if the clergy around Australia were wondering why their churches were a bit more full on Sunday, it was because all the Liberal Party people went to church to pray that tomorrow's news poll is better for the Prime Minister and she does get a bit of a bounce, so that the Kevin Rudd thing is delayed. Look, When you look at the Labor Party, what should well, of course they should change, but you look at the leadership geniuses and the tactical gurus who are running the Labor Party. Prime Minister on top, the Treasurer who can't count, a Finance Minister who just wants to spend stuff, and a Communications Minister who gave us the National Bloopers Network. And they are the people who are propping up the Prime Minister and are the stoppers between Kevin Rudd or even between Bill Shorten, because they are unemployable in any other situation, any other regime.
Okay, just getting back though to this question of the leadership and whether Julia Gillard will survive the next fortnight. Bruce Hawker, we need to remind people, of course, that you played a very active role 12 months ago in the push to get Kevin Rudd back into the job, but since then you've maintained the line that was settled then, and unless there is a vacancy, then nothing's going to happen. What do you think will happen in the next 2 weeks?
Well, I take a slightly more optimistic view of those EMC figures than Grahame obviously does. I think it does provide something of a bounce for the Prime Minister. Maybe the trip to Rooty Hill in Western Sydney has had some effect there, and that's a positive. I don't think we're going to see a change in the next fortnight. That's my sense of things, but I'm a little bit further removed from it now than I was previously. But as I think people found to their great regret, regicide is a very, very difficult and painful process, not only for the victim but for those that engage in it. And I think that there would be a lot of people there who'd be worried about the effects of removing Gillard from the Prime Ministership, more of the same that what we saw before with Kevin Rudd. So none of this is easy, I think, for those who are involved in the horrors really at the moment for Labor. And I don't think anyone should really gild the lily on this. We're in a very, very difficult position with the primary vote being in the low 30s. There should be a 4 in front of those numbers, not a 3.
There also has been a bit more speculation within Labor and also in the commentariat about the third way here, the third option, and that seems most likely to revolve around the possibility of Bill Shorten. Now, my understanding is that he still is not keen on moving into that job, into the leadership this side of the election at least, given the way things look, and is remaining solidly behind Julia Gillard. Well, Grahame, first to you on this. Do you think if he could be convinced by others to step up to the job as the only option for Labor at this point, that would be a good move, a smart move, or do you think it's better at this point to stick with the PM?
Well, we have seen Bill Shorten positioning himself in a hawk-like sort of manner, sort of the healer, whether it's business and unions, whether it's both sides of Parliament, and certainly that would be the case in the caucus. That the Gillard people wouldn't feel terribly miffed if the vote went to him, and the Rudd people would be quite happy for the vote to go anywhere except Julia Gillard. So the obvious one to look at is Bill Shorten, and but he's got to put up his hand. At the moment you would say, well, look, what is in the best interests of the party? And surely it's not suicide.
But he's in a tough spot here, isn't he? Because if he's involved in another leadership removal, he gets damned again for doing that. If he doesn't do anything and they do go over the cliff badly, he gets damned for not doing enough to stop that train wreck.
Well, that's right. But that's why I think people have to say what is in the best interest of the Labor Party. If they argued last time it was the best interest of the Labor Party to get rid of Kevin, and they sort of won by 1 seat, then why isn't it in the Labor Party's best interest now to get rid of Julia when they're going to lose by 20 seats?
Bruce, what do you think about the prospects and the performance of the third option might be? Would it be a smart move or something even worth contemplating?
Well, on a number of counts, I don't think it's a good idea. One, I think Bill Shorten has got a long career ahead of him in politics, and it's not unreasonable to say that there's a real potential that he'd be handed a poisoned chalice if he were to take over the Prime Ministership now. We are in a very powerless position. They're going to fight hard to win the election, etc., but it's going to be a very, very tough time, and so Bill taking over the leadership at a time when he might just be held responsible unfairly for the loss, I think would be wasting a potential future leader of the party, because I think he has got leadership written all over him. Secondly, I don't think it would necessarily satisfy a large section of the community out there who, frankly, never got used to the idea that Kevin Rudd should be removed as Prime Minister in the first place. He was taken out in a in a midnight coup. He sought their endorsement a second time and was rejected. Since then, he said he's not going to put his hand up again, so he's out of the race. Why would you then go to somebody else who was, who wasn't the public's choice? That's the root of this problem.
Yeah, but you seem to be suggesting there that Kevin Rudd is out of the race. Is he out of the race though if the Prime Minister steps down voluntarily? I mean, surely at that point, and I'm not saying that's about to happen, but if it did happen, then you seem to be saying that's the only way that you could right that wrong in removing Kevin Rudd.
Well, I think the only thing that I think if there was a ballot called, I don't think Kevin Rudd's going to be a candidate. I mean, I can't speak on his behalf, but that's everything that he said to date. Beyond that, I don't know how you can speculate much more.
Even if the PM calls a ballot this week and throws it open, and presumably she would contest it, you don't think Kevin Rudd would be a candidate?
No, I don't. I do not think he would be a candidate.
Which leaves the only way of him coming back being that if Julia Gillard steps down.
I guess, I mean, if there was something like that, who knows what would happen, but there's no sign of that happening either, and we're in speculation on speculation now, and I think it's really not all that useful.
Grahame?
Oh, there's some tactical geniuses in the Labor Party. They've really got this well organised. Look, there's a grain of truth in what Bruce said, that if there was a change, it may well be that the electorate reacts quite violently, because at the moment they want to be the ones to remove Julia Gillard, and they might be quite miffed if the Labor Party does it for them.
Well, we will see what takes place over the coming couple of weeks and what that news poll shows tomorrow as well. Will it also have a bit of an improvement for Labor, or will they go the other way? We'll have to wrap it up there. Grahame Morris.
Pray.
He's praying already. Grahame Morris and Bruce Hawker, thanks so much for joining us. We'll catch up next week.